I am Samantha Hughes, 30, and literally last weekend my so-called reputation as the family peacemaker, yeah, that backfired spectacularly. The fragile truce I'd spent years holding together, patching over insults, smoothing tension, biting my tongue until it bled, it shattered into full-on chaos at our annual family reunion barbecue. And the trigger? My brother Derek, golden boy of the Hughes name, slapped my 6-year-old daughter Lily across the face for singing too loudly during lunch. And our dad, classic Harold Hughes, just stood there arms crossed with that smug little smirk he gets when he thinks discipline has been restored. No one said a word. Not Aunt Bren, not Cousin Miles, not even my mother, who just kept fixing the potato salad like nothing had happened. The slap wasn't loud, but the silence afterward was deafening. "You just ruined us," my aunt hissed after I raised my voice. But here's the kicker. That moment didn't break me. It sparked something ancient inside me, something that had been ignored, dismissed, and stepped over for decades. I'm not here to be anyone's scapegoat anymore. I'm not here to be polite. I'm not here to be quiet. I'm done. And the best part? That entire moment, the slap, the gasps, the stunned silence, it was caught on a hot mic. A documentary crew filming a piece on multi-generational family dynamics, don't ask me why they chose us, maybe God has a sense of humor, had audio rolling. What Derek didn't know is that this time, there was evidence. Unedited, unfiltered, irrefutable. So stay with me, because I'm going to walk you through exactly how I took that one moment of violence, humiliation, and silence, and flipped it into the most satisfying takedown you've ever heard. The kind of justice that doesn't just expose the abuser, but the entire rotten system that enabled him. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge arc you'll hear all year. Looking back, it's almost wild, because you wouldn't believe what I ended up doing once that recording landed in my inbox. I wish I could say this slap came out of nowhere, that it was shocking. But if I'm being honest, really honest, it was just the first time anyone besides me and Lily had the guts to acknowledge what had always simmered beneath the surface. Growing up in the Hughes family, you learned real quick that silence was survival, that speaking up got you labeled as dramatic, oversensitive, or just tired. And I was all three apparently. Derek, on the other hand, could do no wrong. From the moment he came out of the womb with that loud cry and full head of hair, the world tilted in his favor. My parents acted like he cured cancer when he got a B on a math test. Meanwhile, I once brought home a first-place science fair trophy and got a distracted, "That's nice, honey," while Dad rewound the game for Derek's touchdown replay. They loved the image of being a perfect family. Perfect son, perfect house, perfectly rehearsed holiday cards. Me? I was the static. I always messed with the photo, never smiling wide enough, or asking too many questions, or crying when Derek accidentally pushed me down the stairs. That wasn't abuse, according to Dad. That was siblings roughhousing. When I complained about Derek hiding my homework or calling me names at school, Mom would glance up from her wine and mutter, "Ignore him, sweetheart. Don't give him the power." By the time I was 14, I'd stopped telling them anything real. I started writing instead, quietly in composition notebooks I kept hidden behind books on my shelf. Writing was where I didn't have to beg to be understood. It was where I was allowed to feel something and name it. The page never told me I was too much. But the Hughes household didn't celebrate quiet victories. They praised noise, Derek's booming voice, his tantrums, his football wins, his fights, his passion, they called it. "Boys will be boys," Dad would say, as Derek punched holes in walls and slammed doors during his teenage years. "At least he's not out selling drugs." That was the bar, not selling drugs. Me? I was the good one. I kept the house clean, got good grades, tried not to cause trouble, and still, somehow, I was always the problem. So, no, that slap didn't shock me. What shocked me was the way Lily's little face crumpled. The way her small hand went to her cheek like she couldn't believe someone had the right to touch her like that. And in that moment, watching her try to hold in her tears, just like I had done for most of my childhood, I knew. This wasn't just history repeating. This was a line being drawn, and for the first time in my life I was ready to cross it. Even while being the family's silent scapegoat, there was something nobody noticed about me. Something I intentionally kept hidden beneath layers of their dismissal. While Derek stole the spotlight and my parents perfected their carefully staged family photos, I was quietly creating something of my own, something meaningful, something that was entirely mine. It started a few years after Lily was born, during nights filled with exhaustion and doubt. I was a single mother, working 2 part-time jobs, barely scraping enough to make rent, let alone feel secure. But one night, as I rocked Lily to sleep, staring at her tiny face lit up by the soft glow of my phone, I had a moment of clarity so sharp it startled me. I was scrolling through parenting forums, reading post after post from mothers like me, women struggling silently, desperate for support, advice, validation. We weren't looking for pity, just understanding. Something clicked. Why wasn't there a real, supportive community for moms who felt invisible and overwhelmed? A place to learn, share resources, and, more importantly, feel seen. I set Lily down gently and grabbed an old notebook, scribbling ideas furiously, until sunrise turned the sky pink. By morning, I knew I had something real, something I desperately wished existed when I needed it most. I named it Lily's Village, after the little girl who inspired me. At first, it was a humble blog and private Facebook group. I wrote honestly, brutally even, about the realities of motherhood without family support. Soon, women from everywhere flooded in, sharing their own stories, crying with relief in the comments, exchanging advice and encouragement. For the first time, I realized that what I'd believed was weakness, my invisibility, was actually my greatest strength. It had made me observant, empathetic, and quietly relentless. Within months, Lily's Village exploded. I stayed anonymous, terrified my family would find it and ridicule me, yet secretly I worked through every night, pouring my heart and soul into building it into a full-fledged parenting support platform. By the time Lily turned 4, I'd left both my jobs behind. Sponsors and brands started knocking on my virtual door, desperate to reach this thriving community I'd carefully nurtured. But the biggest win came exactly 6 months before the disastrous reunion barbecue. An investor group approached, offering real life-changing funding. They wanted to turn Lily's Village into a nationwide parenting resource. Apps, podcasts, books, seminars, even childcare support centers. It felt surreal. Overnight, my quiet little side project was about to become something massive. Something powerful. I kept it secret from my family. I didn't trust them. Not to celebrate, not to support, certainly not to believe. So, as the reunion approached, I walked into that toxic battlefield still playing the role they'd assigned to me. The struggling single mom who could barely keep herself afloat. But deep down, hidden beneath their insults, condescension, and judgment, I carried the fire of my secret success. And it was that quiet certainty, that unwavering knowledge of what I'd built from nothing, that gave me the strength to finally stand up, look Derek and Dad in the eyes and think, you have no idea who you're dealing with. The morning of the family reunion barbecue, I woke up with dread curled like a snake in my stomach. It was Saturday, exactly 1 day after the investor group sent over their final contracts. My lawyer said once I signed, Lily's Village would officially receive the funding, and my life would change forever. But instead of feeling joyful, I just felt sick. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the digital document glowing quietly on my laptop screen. All I had to do was click sign, and I'd be the founder of a company set to redefine motherhood support nationwide. But my finger hovered, trembling slightly above the mouse, unable to close the deal. It wasn't fear of success that froze me. It was fear of my family's inevitable reaction. Signing meant that soon my secret would become public. Signing meant no more hiding, no more anonymity. Signing meant stepping out from the shadow of the Hughes family's version of me, and forcing them to see the Samantha they never knew existed. Would they mock me again? Dismiss me as delusional? Or worse, would they somehow sabotage this too, like they sabotaged every bit of self-esteem I'd ever built? Lily wandered into the kitchen just then, her tiny feet padding softly across the tile floor. She looked at me with sleepy eyes, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit tightly against her chest. "Mama, are we still going today?" she asked, her voice gentle but curious. I pulled her into my lap, breathing in the soft scent of her shampoo. I had every reason to say no. I had every right to keep us safe, away from their toxic comments and harsh looks. But there was still that stubborn hope buried in my chest. The the small, whispering voice that always said, maybe this time will be different. I smiled down at Lily, brushing a curl from her forehead. Yeah, sweetheart, we're going. But just remember, you sing as loud as you want, okay? And Mama will always be there no matter what. She nodded, her eyes sparkling with excitement, blissfully unaware of the emotional storm brewing inside me. Later, as we drove to the reunion, the contracts remained unsigned, sitting silently in my inbox. Every mile closer to my parents' house felt heavier, the air thicker, each breath a little harder. My phone buzzed from my purse, messages from the investor team asking if everything was okay. I ignored them, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Pulling up to the familiar driveway was like stepping back into a nightmare. The carefully manicured lawn, the pristine white fence, every inch screamed perfection, masking years of hidden dysfunction. I took a deep breath and turned to Lily, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. Ready? Ready? She shouted, beaming. I stepped out of the car and felt immediately smaller, the family's critical gazes already landing on me from across the yard. Dad stood near the grill, Derek lounging confidently nearby, beer in hand. They exchanged a look when they saw me, a shared smirk that told me exactly how this day would go. But this time, they weren't dealing with the old Samantha who bent under their cruelty. They were dealing with someone different. Someone quietly powerful. Someone who knew her worth, even if they didn't yet. Today, whether they knew it or not, would be the very last time they ever underestimated me. Stepping into that backyard felt like willingly walking into enemy territory. Derek raised his beer in a sarcastic salute as I approached, eyes narrowed in quiet contempt. I forced myself to smile back, determined not to let them see any cracks. Look who decided to grace us with her presence, Dad called loudly from behind the grill, flipping burgers without glancing my way. Hope you brought something decent this year, Samantha. Last year's salad was memorable. My cheeks flushed hot, embarrassment mixing instantly with old familiar rage. Nice to see you too, Dad, I said evenly, gripping Lily's hand just a bit tighter. My mother, Clara, approached in a whirl of expensive perfume, offering me a brittle hug and a kiss that landed awkwardly somewhere near my ear. Oh, Samantha dear, you look healthy, she remarked, the faintest wrinkle appearing between her brows as she glanced down at my casual dress. I see you're still embracing your comfort style. Translation, you look fat, and why can't you ever dress nicely? I took a breath, letting her comment roll off like water. It's good to see you, Mom. She forced a thin-lipped smile, turning abruptly to Lily. And you? My, haven't you gotten big? Have you been behaving yourself for your mother? Or still giving her trouble? Lily shrank slightly, unsure how to respond. I knelt beside her, gently touching her shoulder. Lily's wonderful, I said firmly, holding my mother's gaze. She's my pride and joy. Oh, I'm sure, Mom said, already walking away toward Aunt Bren, who was hovering nearby with a smirk. Another glance passed between them, silent, smug, and cutting. We settled at a picnic table near the edge of the yard. Lily bounced excitedly on the wooden bench, singing softly to herself as she arranged her napkin. Her innocent joy was my anchor, my safe harbor in this sea of subtle cruelty. I took another deep breath, scanning the yard filled with relatives who'd never really accepted me. Uncle Bruce raised an eyebrow from across the lawn, murmuring something to Cousin Miles, who chuckled under his breath. I was used to this treatment, but the sting never dulled completely. Just then Derek wandered over, beer sloshing slightly, his smile twisted. So, Sam, he began loudly, making sure our cousins could hear, you still doing that little blog thing? A ripple of muted laughter ran through those nearby. I forced myself to smile, refusing to take the bait. Yes, Derek, it's going well. He nodded, leaning closer conspiratorially. Must be nice living off clicks and charity, huh? You planning to get a real job anytime soon? My throat tightened, pulse quickening in my temples. I have a real job, and I love what I do. He laughed sharply, glancing around at our audience. Right, real inspiring stuff. Single mom influencer, truly groundbreaking career. Heat prickled at the back of my neck. I glanced down at Lily, who'd grown quiet, sensing the shift, but she shook it off, starting again softly. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Derek's jaw twitched, irritation flickering behind his eyes. Hey, kid, he snapped suddenly, voice harsher than necessary. Can you tone it down? We're having an adult conversation here. Lily faltered, eyes wide, confused. Derek leaned closer, voice dropping dangerously. "Didn't you hear me?" I tensed, about to intervene, but before I could react, he raised his hand swiftly, striking Lily's cheek with casual brutality. Her tiny gasp echoed, sharp and clear, puncturing the air. My world stopped as I stared in disbelief, heart hammering, breath frozen. And in that terrible silence, I realized I'd finally had enough. The sound of Derek's slap echoed through me like a gunshot. My breath caught, frozen in my chest. Lily stared up at him in stunned silence, tears already pooling, her small hand trembling as she pressed it to the red mark blooming rapidly on her cheek. No one moved. Not Dad, who just watched, expression cold and detached. Not Mom, who turned away, suddenly fascinated by the platter of deviled eggs. Not Aunt Bren or Uncle Bruce, whose faces turned away in cowardly avoidance. It was as if their silence was a stamp of approval, reinforcing every sick rule of our twisted family game. But something in me broke open. The careful mask of politeness I'd worn my whole life shattered, and the Samantha who had stayed silent all these years finally spoke. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I said, voice dangerously quiet, staring straight at Derek. He sneered, shaking out his hand, pretending it hurt more than Lily's face. "Relax. She needs to learn some manners. You clearly aren't teaching her any." My pulse roared in my ears. The world shrank down to this single confrontation, this brutal, defining moment. "Don't ever touch my child again," I said, each word slow, deliberate, burning with rage. Dad scoffed loudly from near the grill. "Oh, enough with the dramatics, Samantha." Derek barely tapped her. "Stop making a scene." "A scene?" My hands curled into fists at my sides, nails digging painfully into my palms, the sting grounding me. "Barely tapped her?" I repeated, disbelief coloring my voice. "He hit a 6-year-old child, my child, and you're defending it?" Dad's jaw clenched, eyes darkening with familiar contempt. "Always the victim, aren't you, Samantha? You never understood family. You never respected authority. Maybe that's why you're alone. Maybe that's why Lily doesn't have a father." The cruelty of his words knocked the air from me, the pain briefly stunning. My gaze moved desperately around the yard, seeking someone, anyone who might defend me. But every face was closed, eyes averted, silent accomplices to decades of abuse and manipulation. Derek stepped closer, voice lowering into a venomous hiss. "Why don't you do us all a favor, Sam? Go back to wherever you crawled out from. Nobody wants you here anyway." I looked down at Lily, now clinging to my leg, her small shoulders shaking. Something cold and steely settled into my chest, a determination born not from revenge, but protection. "You know what?" I said, voice steady despite the trembling fury within. "You're right. I don't belong here, and neither does Lily. We don't belong anywhere that allows cruelty." Dad narrowed his eyes, expression darkening. "If you walk away now, Samantha, don't ever think about coming back. You're done. We're done." I met his eyes, chin lifting with a defiance I'd never felt before. "Good," I said clearly, firmly. "We're better off without you." Without another word, I scooped Lily into my arms, holding her close, heart pounding fiercely in my chest as I walked steadily out of that yard. I didn't look back, not even once. I didn't need their approval anymore, and for the first time in my life, being disowned felt less like punishment, and more like freedom. I sat in the driver's seat, heart still hammering as I clutched Lily tightly to my chest. Tears silently soaked the shoulder of my dress, her tiny frame shuddering softly against mine. The air in the car was heavy, charged with lingering disbelief and rage. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered gently, stroking her soft curls. "Mama's here, it's over, you're safe now." Lily pulled back slightly, lifting wide, tear-filled eyes to meet mine. Her voice was small, shaky, heartbreaking. "Why did Uncle Derek do that, Mama? Did I do something bad?" My chest tightened painfully, anger coiling hot and fierce in my gut. "No, baby," I said firmly, cupping her small face gently. "You didn't do anything wrong. Uncle Derek made a very, very bad choice. And he will never hurt you again, I promise." She sniffled softly, burrowing closer again, trustingly melting into me. I exhaled slowly, closing my eyes for a long moment, willing myself to hold it together for her sake. A sudden buzzing from my phone broke through the quiet, startling me slightly. I glanced down, expecting more messages from the investors, but the screen displayed an unfamiliar number. Hesitantly, I answered. "Hello?" A nervous, breathless voice came through the speaker. Hi, is this Samantha Hughes?" "Yes," I answered warily. "Who is this?" "This is Julia Harris. I'm part of the documentary crew at your family's barbecue today. She paused, swallowing audibly. Look, I know this is a lot, but I have something you need to hear. My heart quickened, a strange anticipation mixing with dread. I'm listening. She exhaled shakily. We were mic'd up for filming. I didn't realize it at first, right? But the whole incident, the slap, your brother's words, your father's comments, everything was captured clearly on audio. I went cold, my breath hitching sharply, my voice was barely a whisper. You recorded the whole thing? Yes, she said urgently. I felt sick about it. We were going to scrap the footage, but then I realized you might need proof. Something undeniable. Proof. The words surged through me like electricity. After a lifetime of gaslighting, silence, and dismissal, I finally had something concrete, irrefutable evidence of the cruelty I'd endured and that Lily had suffered. My hand trembled violently as I gripped the phone tighter. Can you send it to me? I asked, voice shaking slightly. Right now? Already done, Julia replied quietly. Check your email. I opened it immediately, tapping the audio file that appeared, labeled simply, Incident, Hughes Family BBQ. My heart thundered as I pressed play, hearing clearly Derek's sharp command, Lily's soft singing, the sickening sound of the slap, her shocked gasp, my angry challenge, and Dad's harsh dismissal. My stomach clenched painfully, fury and relief mingling in my chest. Thank you, Julia, I said softly, sincerely. You have no idea how much this means. I think maybe I do, she replied gently. Do whatever you need to with it. Just promise me one thing. You won't let them get away with this. I felt a newfound fire ignite in my chest, fierce and unquenchable. Trust me, I replied steadily, eyes narrowing with determination. They won't. As I hung up, I glanced at Lily, who was now peacefully asleep, curled safely against me. For the first time in my life, I finally held real power in my hands, and I knew exactly how I was going to use it. I didn't waste time. Once Lily was safely asleep at home, tucked gently into her bed, I sat alone at my kitchen table, the house silent around me. The audio file sat quietly on my laptop screen, waiting, powerful, undeniable. Every second captured on that recording was proof of the cruelty I'd faced, of Derek's violence, and of my father's quiet endorsement. My finger hovered over the mouse, nerves fluttering in my stomach. I knew exactly what pressing send would mean. There would be no turning back. My family's facade of perfection, Derek's reputation, my father's authority, all of it would shatter instantly. But when I closed my eyes, all I saw was Lily's small face, red and tear-streaked, confused and frightened. I felt again that helpless, silent rage I'd swallowed countless times throughout my life. This time there was no choice. I composed an email, simple, professional, and direct, to Derek's boss, copying Julia and the documentary producers. In one concise paragraph, I described what had happened, attached the audio file, and then sat back, heart pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath and clicked send. For several minutes, nothing happened. The room remained quiet, peaceful, and deceptively normal. Then my phone lit up. First one notification, then another, rapidly multiplying, flooding in faster than I could read. Texts, emails, social media mentions, everything exploding at once. My inbox lit up like a fireworks show, and I knew instantly that the carefully constructed world Derek had built was crumbling under the weight of undeniable truth. My screen flashed with Derek's number. A wave of nausea rolled through me, but I answered, steeling myself. You think you can ruin me? Derek's voice came harshly, raw and desperate through the phone. Take that down, now. My hand trembled slightly, but my voice remained firm. You did this to yourself, Derek. You hurt Lily. Did you think you'd get away with it forever? She's a spoiled brat. No, I snapped sharply, cutting him off. She's a child, my child, and you will never hurt her or anyone else again. He laughed bitterly, desperation edging his voice. Dad's furious, Mom's crying, you've torn our family apart. Are you happy now? I paused, clarity crystallizing inside me. Yes, I answered steadily. I'm happy Lily's safe, and that's all that matters. I hung up without another word, heart racing, breathing heavily. Derek's call was followed almost immediately by one from my father, but I ignored it, then silenced my phone altogether, watching quietly as messages piled up. Anger, threats, pleas, manipulation, desperation. Finally, I closed the laptop, pushing it away as exhaustion settled into my bones. I stood, moving to Lily's room, peeking quietly through the door. She slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling rhythmically, face relaxed and innocent in sleep. My heart squeezed painfully. This had never been about revenge, it had always been about protection, justice, safety. I'd spent years believing I had no power, that their cruelty defined me, that my voice didn't matter. But tonight, in one bold, unapologetic act, I'd reclaimed everything they had ever tried to take from me. For the first time in my life, I had stood up, refused to be silenced, and rejected every lie they'd ever told me about who I was. And the best part? It felt incredible. A week later, I found myself surrounded by warmth instead of judgment, laughter instead of insults. My friend Josie had invited Lily and me to dinner at her place, insisting we needed a night of normalcy. I almost declined, exhausted by the drama still exploding daily from my phone. But as we walked into Josie's cozy apartment, breathing in the scent of homemade lasagna and warm bread, I knew we'd made the right choice. "Come here, you," Josie said, pulling me into a fierce hug. Her strength and sincerity grounded me even as my emotions threatened to overflow. Lily immediately ran to Josie's daughter Emma, both girls giggling as they dashed toward Emma's toy-filled bedroom. "Wine?" Josie offered gently, steering me toward her kitchen. I nodded gratefully, sinking into a kitchen chair with a weary sigh. As she poured generously, Josie shot me a knowing glance. "I heard about the fallout," she said softly. "How bad has it gotten?" I sighed deeply, taking a long sip of wine. "Bad," I admitted. "My dad and Derek called repeatedly, furious. Mom's playing victim. Aunt Bren spreading rumors online, calling me vindictive. It's messy." Josie leaned against the counter, eyes warm and fiercely protective. "But you're not backing down, right?" "No," I said firmly, feeling that steel returning to my spine. "Not this time." "Good," Josie said, nodding approvingly. "Because you did what needed to be done. They don't deserve you, Sam." My throat tightened at her words, emotion rising sharply in my chest. "I'm just so tired," I confessed quietly. "Tired of always fighting, tired of always feeling like I have to prove my worth." Josie moved swiftly to my side, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything here," she said gently. "You've got people who see you, who know exactly how incredible you are, and that little girl in there adores you more than anything." I felt tears sting my eyes, blinking rapidly to keep them at bay. "You don't know how much that means," I whispered hoarsely. "Oh, I think I do," she said warmly. "We don't get to pick our family, but we do get to choose who deserves our time, energy, and love. And Sam? You're choosing wisely now." Just then, laughter erupted from Emma's room, Lily's giggle ringing clear and carefree. Josie smiled, eyes twinkling knowingly. "That sound right there? That's your victory. That's your proof." I smiled softly, letting her words sink in, the truth settling deeply in my heart. For the first time since the incident, the tension in my chest loosened slightly, giving way to something lighter. Hopeful, even. This wasn't about losing family, it was about recognizing what family actually meant. Family wasn't cruelty, silence, or pain. Family was warmth, acceptance, laughter, support, the kind of pure joy ringing out from the next room. Sitting in Josie's cozy kitchen, the scent of lasagna warming the air, I finally understood. I hadn't lost anything. I'd gained clarity, strength, and something infinitely more precious. People who genuinely loved us. People who deserved to be called family. And suddenly, for the first time in years, I felt safe. In the days following dinner at Josie's, my phone continued buzzing relentlessly with messages from my family. They oscillated between threats, insults, desperate apologies, and guilt-laden attempts at manipulation. At first, each notification set my pulse racing with anxiety, old instincts compelling me to respond, to explain, to justify. But slowly, steadily, a new strength grew inside me, a resolve I'd never felt before. This wasn't their game anymore. I wasn't their pawn. One afternoon, after yet another manipulative voicemail from my father accusing me of tearing apart the family, I made a decision. Sitting at my kitchen table, I opened a blank email, typing carefully. Subject: boundaries. Dear family, from this day forward, our relationship changes completely. I will not tolerate abuse, disrespect, manipulation, or gaslighting. You've shown me clearly where your loyalty lies, and it's never been with me or my daughter. So to protect Lily and myself, these are my rules. 1. No contact with Lily. Ever. She deserves safety and genuine love. 2. If you contact me again with threats, accusations, or manipulation, I will involve law enforcement. 3. Any attempt to publicly smear me or Lily will be met with swift legal action. This isn't negotiable. Samantha. I paused briefly, my finger hovering above the send button, heart hammering fiercely. With a deep, grounding breath, I clicked send. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed. Derek's name flashed angrily on the screen, then Dad's, then Mom's. The messages filled my notifications, angry, desperate, insulting. But this time I didn't even flinch. Instead, I switched off my phone completely, placing it face down on the table. Then, calmly and deliberately, I opened my laptop again. I navigated back to the investor's contract for Lily's Village, the one I'd hesitated to sign before the reunion, the one that would change everything. I stared at the document, breathing deeply, feeling the quiet weight of this moment settling over me. This was more than funding. It was validation. It was recognition of my worth, my strength, my passion. It was my new beginning, free from their shadow, free from their judgment. I clicked sign. A confirmation message flashed immediately on the screen, sealing my decision and setting a new course for my life. The relief was overwhelming. Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness but from sheer release. I leaned back in my chair, smiling faintly, feeling the enormous weight of their judgment finally lift from my shoulders. When I finally turned my phone back on hours later, the furious messages had stopped, replaced by one quiet, sincere text from Josie. Saw your update, proud of you, welcome to your new life. The warmth in her simple words wrapped around me, comforting and strong. I smiled softly, knowing that Josie and my chosen family would always be there, genuinely supporting every step forward. This was freedom. True freedom. Freedom built not from their approval, but from my own determination to stand firm, to demand better, and to protect what mattered most. Lily, myself, and the future we deserved. And in this new reality I set the rules, drew the boundaries, and controlled my story. Finally, I felt unstoppable. A month after signing the Lily's Village contract, my inbox was filled not with angry messages from my past, but with words of gratitude from women I'd never met. With the funding secured, the platform exploded in popularity. What had once been a small online community became a thriving network offering support groups, non-educational resources, childcare partnerships, and even emergency funds for struggling parents. Every success story sent chills through me, every thank you reinforcing the purpose I'd discovered in my pain. But there was one email that shook me more deeply than all the rest. The subject simply said, "You saved us." My heart pounded as I opened it. Dear Samantha, you don't know me, but I've followed your story. When you spoke out against your family, when you protected your daughter, you gave me the courage I needed to leave a dangerous situation myself. Because of your bravery, my son and I are safe today. You reminded me that my worth isn't defined by my abuser, but by me alone. Thank you for saving our lives. With eternal gratitude, Carol. Tears streamed down my face, blurring the words on the screen. In that moment, everything came full circle. I realized the power of speaking my truth wasn't just for me or Lily. It rippled outward, touching lives I'd never even imagined. My act of courage wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about breaking a cycle that had held too many captive. Inspired by Caroline's story, I launched a new initiative through Lily's Village called the Lily Fund, dedicated to supporting families escaping abuse. It provided immediate financial assistance, counseling services, legal support, and most importantly, a message of unwavering belief. You're not alone. You are worthy. Your story matters. The announcement drew media attention, bringing my story back into the spotlight. Interviews and speaking invitations flooded in, each appearance an opportunity to reclaim not just my own narrative, but the legacy of my family name. No longer associated with cruelty or silence, Hughes began to stand for resilience, compassion, and empowerment. One night, while preparing dinner, Lily tugged gently on my sleeve. "Mama, why did you name it Lily's Village?" I knelt down, looking into her bright, curious eyes. "Because you inspired it," I told her softly, brushing a curl behind her ear. "Because you showed me what true strength and love look like. It's named for you, sweetheart, my brave, wonderful girl." She beamed, hugging me tightly. "When I grow up, I want to help people too. Just like you, Mama." My heart swelled, warmth spreading through every inch of me. In that instant, I saw our future clearly, not defined by the past, but shaped by the choices we made every single day, the kindness we offered, and the courage we shared. This was our legacy. Not one inherited from family cruelty or quiet compliance, but one intentionally built with love, bravery, and integrity. It was proof that no matter where you started, your story was yours to rewrite. Standing in my kitchen, Lily wrapped tightly in my arms, I knew this was only the beginning. There were still chapters to write, challenges to face, and lives to touch. But I was ready, stronger than ever before, confident that together, Lily and I could change our world, one brave choice at a time. Tonight, exactly 1 year from that awful barbecue, I sit quietly on my porch, Lily curled sleepily beside me, her head resting gently on my shoulder. Above us, stars flicker softly, scattered across the velvet sky. The air is warm and gentle, wrapping around us like a comforting embrace. A sense of peace settles deep within me, calm and sure, replacing the anxious hum I'd carried inside me for as long as I can remember. Looking back, I finally understand. The slap that shattered our family wasn't the beginning of our story. It was simply the moment I chose to rewrite our ending. My entire life, I'd allowed my worth to be defined by those who never really saw me, never truly knew me. But now, in this quiet moment, beneath the endless night sky, I know exactly who I am. I'm Samantha Hughes, and my value isn't tied to their approval, their validation, or their toxic standards. It comes from somewhere far deeper, far stronger, my own heart, my own integrity, and the gentle breaths of the little girl beside me. I glance down at Lily, her eyes closed, face serene in sleep, and feel a profound sense of gratitude. She showed me what unconditional love looked like. She taught me bravery, and because of her, I had the strength to finally break the cycle of pain, silence, and cruelty. I'm not the family scapegoat anymore. I'm not invisible, and I certainly don't need their apologies. My peace doesn't depend on their remorse or understanding. My healing didn't come from their recognition. It came from finally recognizing myself. The silence between my family and me no longer feels heavy. Instead, it feels like relief, space to breathe, space to grow, space to build a life that's authentically ours. And I wouldn't trade this hard-won peace for anything. Tonight, beneath the quiet starlight, I see clearly the truth that was always mine to claim. My worth was never theirs to define. My story was always mine to write. I gently brush Lily's hair back, whispering softly, "I love you, my brave girl." She stirs slightly, murmuring back sleepily, "Love you too, Mama." My heart swells, tears quietly gathering, this time from happiness, because now I know, beyond any doubt, that the greatest victory isn't revenge, punishment, or even justice. The greatest victory is choosing yourself, protecting those you love, and having the courage to walk away from anyone who tells you otherwise. So here I sit, exactly 1 year from the day I chose courage over comfort, truth over silence, love over loyalty, and finally, for the first time in my life, I'm truly, completely free. This isn't just my ending. It's a new beginning, a life built intentionally, powerfully, authentically. And from now on, the only voice that matters is mine. Have you ever felt like you had to shrink yourself to fit someone else's version of who you should be? Have you experienced the painful realization that the people who should love you most are the ones holding you back? If you see yourself in my story, if it resonated deep in your bones, I'd love to hear about your experiences. Drop a comment below and share your journey with us. You never know whose life you might touch by speaking your truth. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success, happiness, and love on your own terms. Remember, you don't owe anyone your silence, your compliance, or your peace. Your voice matters, your boundaries matter, and you deserve a life built from courage, authenticity, and self-worth. Ask yourself today, what cycles are you ready to break? Reflect on it, share it, embrace your story, and let it empower you. Your worth is yours alone to define, and your peace is worth protecting. You are stronger than you ever imagined, and your story matters.